Yeah, we're visiting the Major Charles B. Hall Air Park here at the Tinker Air Force Base in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. And Major Hall was a Tuskegee Airman. And I'll let you look at the plaque. I'm not going to read the plaque off, but looks like he was in World War II and did a lot of activity over in Africa and Europe theaters. So he's did some pretty honorable stuff. So it looks like they got a lot of aircraft here, so I'm going to go down and start at the beginning. So right here is a this is the F-105D Thunder Chief, and when I was a kid I remember these things flying out of McConnell Air Force Base in Wichita, Kansas. They usually take off and do sonic booms. This is in the early 60s, of course, and as a young kid seeing these fly over it's pretty impressive because they would go fast. And these were used mainly in Vietnam in the early years, and they still have a couple on display around the country, but you don't see these flying anymore. They're just museum pieces. And right next to it we have a I'm not sure what this is. I have to go look. I don't remember what this is. It's an A-7D Corsair II, and the Navy used to use these on their aircraft carriers. I was never a big fan of these. I always thought they're kind of crazy looking, but apparently they were pretty effective over in Vietnam, and they could really haul some weight and do some damage. And again, here's a little side view of the 105, and these are in pretty good shape. They actually keep them well maintained here at near this Tinker Air Force Base. B-47 kind of had a limited career. They were built to use nuclear weapons and things like that, but I don't think they really ever saw a lot of action. I remember when I was a kid, again, living near McConnell Air Force Base, they had a few of these stationed there, and I only saw a few of them go over when I lived there. And they just, as soon as the B-52 came out, they mothballed these and put them back in the museums. And it was a B-47 Stratojet. They came out in 1947. Okay, we're gonna move on down to the next things here. And we got quite a bit of aircraft down here. Hope my batteries last. These were DC-3s, but the military called them C-47s. They still fly these today. There's a lot of these doing cargo runs, and so they're pretty still active to this day, and they're pretty durable plane. Yeah, this was C-47 Skytrain. Go any bird, but they got all these engines, nacelles sealed up. They got these pretty well protected and pretty well preserved. So Here's the back of that B-47. They used to have a 50 caliber machine guns on the back of those for defense. Again, here's this DC-3, and I'm sure everybody's seen these before. They're nothing spectacular. They're just an old workhorse. I say they still use them for freight and cargo these days. So I didn't realize they had these other jets here. I thought this was the mostly larger airplanes. The EA-6B Prowler, again, the Navy used these, and Northrop Grumman made them. Electronic warfare aircraft, A-6 Intruder. There's a great movie, The Flight of the Intruder. It's a pretty good movie. You need to watch it. And these things are pretty durable. They use these over in Vietnam. They fly off the carriers and do sorties into Vietnam. I was surprised how long they used these in the Navy. I mean, these weren't retired until probably 20 years ago or so. There's that arresting hook in case you want to do a carrier landing, which most of these did. And that's crazy. That thing, that's all you'd use to keep you from going out the edge of the plane, or the deck of the ship. I think they're using F-15 growlers now to jam frequencies when they were going out on sorties. This is an old 707, Boeing 707, and I'm gonna go find out what this was. They used to use these for air tankers and refueling by the Air Force. I'm not sure what this was the purpose of it was. C-135 straddle lifter. They say this is cargo, I guess. The ones I remember, the KC-135 tankers, they're the ones who used to be stationed in McConnell Air Force Base in Wichita, and I've seen them fly over there for years. So they phased these out, brought in the 757, the Boeing 757 that made those tankers. So and these aircraft are really well preserved. There's a really good presentation to have. It's pretty impressive. There goes some jets coming from Tinker Air Force Base, which I'm right next to. The commissary's right there. I remember these, again, growing up in Wichita, Kansas, just close to McConnell Air Force Base. These F-4s would come over all the time screaming, and talk about sonic booms. This is before they outlawed the sonic booms and had all sorts of noise requirements. But it was pretty impressive watching these things fly over. Like I said, these were used a lot in Vietnam. This thing's a hot rod. This thing did a lot of work over Vietnam and other theaters. F4D Phantom II. So it's a pretty good little jet. And go look around it. These things had a lot of strange angles on the wings and the stabilizers back here. Again, there's a resting hook in case you're going to land it on a aircraft carrier. So, and one of my favorite airplanes is right here. It's the B-29, and they made these in Wichita, Kansas back in the day, during the war, World War II. And there's only 2 of these flying in the world now. One is called Doc, and it's located in Wichita, Kansas, and there's a beautiful B-29 museum right at the Wichita airport. You need to go see it, because the docents there, the people there are just incredibly knowledgeable on the plane. And there's one lady that works there behind the counter, and she actually built these back in World War II. She was one of the original Rosie the Riveters. I've talked to her there last fall when I went to that museum, and she was just a hoot. And the Doc was actually found out in the desert out near California, I believe, or somewhere out in that area. And they actually took them 8 years to drag it out of the desert and to bring it to Wichita and to reconstruct it. A lot of the people who worked at the Boeing aircraft facility back in World War II came in to help them rehab the airplane. It took them a number of years to do it. And that Rosie the Riveter, she was saying that when they brought the nose of the airplane in, there's only like 8 rivets missing. And she said that she actually riveted the nose cones onto these planes. And so it's pretty impressive. She was really proud of her work, and she has a right to be. But it's impressive. The other one is called Fifi, and I think it's up in Omaha or Lincoln, Nebraska. And this past July 4th, it actually flew over Washington, D.C. So it's amazing that as many as these were built, there's only like 2 flying now. And from what the guys at the museum told me, they had to scavenge parts from all around the country and almost all around the world. And he said even the propellers, they're not made anymore, so they would actually take the propellers off museum pieces like this one and give these guys fake ones in replacement to take the original props with them. So it's pretty impressive. If you have a chance to get to Wichita, Kansas to go see the B-29 museum, it's definitely worth it. It's like $10 to get in. They charge you an extra $5 if you actually want to go up inside the airplane. The guy who was guiding me around, he actually took me up inside the airplane, and I didn't even pay for it, but I paid it on the way out because they were such nice guys, and they know all the stories. The guys working there were actually the ones who fly the airplane, take care of it, and help rebuild it. It's pretty impressive. It's a monumental task. I know when they first brought these out, started building, they had a lot of problems with them. They had to iron out a lot of wrinkles on these things. But once they got them tuned in, they really were well received and great workhorses for what they needed to do. And they still have some of these engines laying around in some warehouses around the country. You can actually buy one if you want to. So it's pretty impressive. But these are just amazingly tall. The wing spans are incredible. Looks like they took out all the nacelle bubbles where the gunners would sit. These things had remote controlled guns. So the guys would sit in this pressurized cabin and they'd actually have to shoot out through some sight that's on the outside of the airplane. It's pretty impressive. And I tell you, that hatch is smaller than it looks. When I crawled up through the bomb bay and kind of went forward, and it's so tight in there, I couldn't get past into the front part of the airplane. It was just too tight. And there's a tube that runs down the middle of this airplane. It has a little shuttle on it. You kind of lay down on this, kind of like a creeper, like you crawl underneath the airplane, underneath your cars, and you have to go back and forth. And I was not even able to get in that. These things are so small inside. And if I wasn't claustrophobic, I might have tried it, but I said forget it. And the back part of these is where the rear gunner would sit, and he actually had an escape hatch. I believe it's on this side over here. You can see where there's a cutout, and that's where he would escape if he had to get out of the airplane. Again, this is pretty tight spaces. You know, I'm 6'2". I couldn't get in there and do that job. I could not be a rear gunner. No way. But these are pretty impressive airplanes for the day. And right here is a B-52. They only have like 76 of these still working in inventory. There's a bunch of them out in the Tucson desert in the boneyard out there. And I think back during Reagan years, they cut up like 300 and some for the non-nuclear pact that they signed with Russia. So they actually took a guillotine and chopped off the tail. So they keep them out there for parts, because these things were built back in the 60s, late 50s, and but they're still serviced today. So if they need parts, they go out to the desert and grab what they can and bring them in. And these things are pretty impressive. As old as they are, they're still being used today. And again, when I was a kid, these things would fly. Boeing aircraft is right next to the McConnell Air Force Base, and Boeing built these. And what they do is they continually test these things, and they would paint big portions of them orange so they know that they're experimental. So they would fly them around and come back and run tests on them. And again, these things were loud. You hear the sonic booms. It's pretty impressive. And I was actually able to go up to the cockpit one time, and it's pretty impressive. But they have modernized these things through the years, and rightly so. They were going to take these two nacelles out and put one engine in here, but apparently the wing can't take the stress. I remember back in the early 70s in a Boeing aircraft in Wichita, they were re-winging these things. So they put all new wings on them, and to get more life out of them. That was a long time ago. I figure back in the early 70s, that was like over 50 years ago. But these things are still flying today. And they used them in Vietnam and carpet bombing and things like that. These things are, it's amazing. There was I read an article one time. There's a grandfather flew these, his son flew them, and his grandson's flying them now. That's how old these things are. That's how long they've been in service. Can you imagine 3 generations flying the same airplane? It's just unheard of. It's a workhorse. These gear actually could turn not sideways but almost sideways, so they shift the whole airplane. The back and the front are able to maneuver, so they can really, because it's such a long airplane, keeps them on track and keeps them going forward. And when they land, they can land in the wind and not really have a problem with it. I remember back when I was a kid, we used to drive by Boeing aircraft, and they had a big, huge earthen berm with a bunch of railroad ties, and they would take, they'd back these B-52s up to it and test fire these cannons back here. And they had that berm was there for a long time. Again, they used to have a rear gunner. Now they're all remote control, all radar, things like that. So, but yeah, you can't imagine nuclear weapons back in the day. And the original plan was to fly a map of the Earth, and so they could avoid radar. And a lot of you guys may know that more about that than I do, but these things, again, were stationed in McConnell Air Force Base, just near Wichita, and these things that fly over there are loud, loud, loud. In fact, all the people in Wichita were complaining on the east side of Wichita how loud they were. So they, I don't know if they're stationed there anymore or not. I think that's more of a refueling air wing in Wichita than anything else. But these things will just flat cook it and get with the program. The B-1 Lancer. They kind of have a Coke bottle shape to the body, and apparently that's very aerodynamic. They kept their wings swept back, I guess, just to keep it more compact. When they spread these wings out to take off, they get pretty wide. Again, those are some large nacelles. They put out some black smoke too. I think Russia actually has they've made copies of these. I can't remember the model number, but theirs looks almost identical to this one. Again, the swept wings, everything. It's just like, it's like they stole the plans for it. It looks identical. Some of you people will know what model I'm talking about. Yeah. I don't know much about these. Again, I'm at the Tinker Air Force Base right outside Oklahoma City, and this is the Charles B. Hall Air Park, and it's pretty impressive if you want to just spend a little bit of time walking around and see these things. Some of the best air parks, air museums I've seen around California, to be honest. Chico has one, and I can't remember, there's one just north of Lake Elsinore, and it has everything you could dream of. But these are mostly just ones that were kind of located here at Tinker during the day. But it's still fun to come and see these things. Again, it's free. You just walk in, and there's free parking. There's air-conditioned restrooms at the front. I actually went over and talked to the people at the gate, and they said no problem, just park there. And it says a 2-hour time limit, but if you're going to spend 2 hours here, I think I guess you could, but here's a little mock-up of some sort of a AGM-129 advanced cruise missile, subsonic, turbofan powered. He went 500 miles an hour. That's looks like a rough mock-up of one. But I know these things, these B-52s can launch about anything off of this platform. They've rearranged the hard points on the wings to accept pretty much anything. Even the hypersonic missiles, I think. So, but you're not allowed to climb these things, which I would never get on these, but they don't want you climbing on them. Of course, don't litter the place. Just be respectful. A little bit of nostalgia for me. You know, having seen a lot of these fly over my house in the day, it's kind of interesting looking back and thinking how powerful these things were, how loud they were. And I'm not sure what this first tornado forecast, March 25th, 48. Oh, okay. Apparently they issued the first tornado forecast on March 25th, 1948. Here at this Tinker Air Force Base. I'm just going to keep the camera rolling. Let's see, maybe I missed something. But the guys at this B-29, the guys at the museum could tell you everything about the engines. I mean, it's amazing. Those guys, it's almost like every one of them can work on these things. And you can actually go for rides. And you go on their website, Doc B29 or something like that, and they'll actually take you for rides in these things. You can just sit in the nose portion here, or sit aft here behind the pilots, or you can actually sit in the rear part of it. Different prices. And I thought about it, but I really it's hard for me to get in there. My back's kind of screwed up. So, but I was going to try it. But I know people who've done that. It's pretty impressive for the money. I know some of the B-17s around, they still give flights on those too. Once in a while they'll come to, they came to, in the past, they came to Wichita and were giving rides. They used to have a lot of air shows in Wichita apparently back in the day. And there was one B-17 that used to come by quite often. And this is probably not the most sexiest jet here, airplane here, but it's important because it was based here in Tinker. I remember Air Force One used to be one of these back in the day. I think it was Nixon or Kennedy, I think, had one of these. But Eisenhower used to have a Lockheed Constellation. Those are excellent airplanes. Again, they have those out in California at that one big air museum out there. If you have a chance, you got to go to these museums. That's an intruder. I'm gonna go this way. We got some old buildings, historic buildings here at the Tinker Air Force Base. Again, I have no idea how you get on them or go in them, but they look pretty old. This one here looks like it's back in the, I mean, that looks like it's built back in the early 1900s, because that looks like the original Wichita Airport building back in the early 1900s. So back in 42, which is early. These are some of the hangars that look like at Boeing and McConnell. They still got these up there. And but this is just about 5 miles outside of east of Oklahoma City off of Highway 40. And if you can make it and have just a little bit of time, it's well worth the time stopping. These are really well preserved, they're well presented, and again, I think it's worth your time. There's a B-47. There's a movie that they had these B-47s in those. Oh, and here's a Rosie the Riveter statue. Yeah, this is kind of like that lady in Wichita at the B-29 Museum in Wichita. Rosie the Riveter. She was so proud of her work. She sat there and talked to me forever. She turned 100 last fall, I think. So she's probably, I mean, 100 years old. She was very lucid and very just knowledgeable. Was able to talk about those days. It's pretty impressive. A lot of respect for her. Again, there's a B-47. Something like they called F-105s a lead sled or something like that back in the day. It was just so heavy and not very aerobatic, I guess. But they used them in Nam, so they did some damage over there. So here's Major Hall, statue of him. Got a Tuskegee Airman. Probably flew the P-51 Mustang. Yeah, I remember they don't have any F-100s here, but I remember the F-100s flying over as well when I was a kid. And the 105s would fly over. And it's pretty impressive growing up in a town that had a lot of aircraft. Boeing was located there, Beech, Cessna, Learjet. So it's kind of like, that's in everybody's blood in the Midwest.